Okay?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so I'm going to talk you through sort of all the experiments that I sort of worked on before coming up with the final piece. The whole thing, the whole experimental aspect of it, the abstract aspect of it, is not me. I'm very used to working to very set guidelines towards a very normal outcome. So the first sort of experiment, image to sound, I found really difficult to actually sort of visualise imagery to work with the sounds themselves. I found myself very, very literal and actually drawing on sort of the skills I had to try and match to maybe rhythm or roughly how the sounded. I found the mark making a lot easier. It was something about relaxing into the song itself and actually listening to it and sort of working, and everything sort of flowed very nicely. What I did start to find is that I started to really clutter up the screen with the animations. It was too chaotic and something I needed to work through. The abstract nature was probably one of the more difficult ones. It was using these completely unrelated imagery to try and create some kind of feeling throughout the whole song. I ended up actually trying to use sort of colour more than anything to sort of get that feeling across and try and match the flow of how the music was working. It wasn't great, but it was more of a step in the right sort of direction. The movement experiment I found was actually really useful for me. So I just used one shape and concentrated on that and sort of one colour to create this really nice feeling of movement on the screen. And it actually gave me the opportunity to actually use less of the screen and actually just use little tiny points here and there rather than completely overcrowd everything. And then sort of moving on from that into the 3D experiments. Now, although I'd done some 3D modelling bits and pieces before, I'd never really done sort of animations and things like that. And it's actually really difficult to be abstract with 3D because in itself it actually requires a lot of planning. So it was quite difficult to get these strange shapes, but I managed to get these really nice twisting motions. And again, actually only used sort of part of this. I didn't want to overwhelm the whole aspect of it. Okay, so actually getting into the song, the final piece and briefly. Now I was unable to find a musician to work with. I did speak to a couple of people. I know a couple of people. Their work's very mainstream. I don't like it, which I think is the problem. I don't think I could have created something as abstract as I have using their music. In some ways I wanted to push my boundaries, so the piece of music I actually chose, I actually hated to begin with. So I thought, okay, you're not going to be handed pieces of music that you love every time, or you're not always going to be working to themes that you love every time. So I thought, I'll get something completely out there. So I used this one, Splinter by and it just sounded like crazy computer techno gibberish noise the first few times I listened to it. But the whole process of the experimentation sort of it almost feels like a journey for me. In getting away from that sort of very, very defined roots of creating things, and then sort of journey into the actual piece of music itself. So if you actually, so when you first look at the piece, you see all these very definite rectangles and definite shapes. Yeah, and you could start, if you think about it from a sort of art history point of view, you could think about the sort of the still movement, sort of Mondrian, Duisberg and Rietveld, and the way they created very sort of rectangular images and try to form those sort of imagery into nature itself. It wasn't really what I was going for. What I was really going for, a lot of my inspiration actually came from sort of very seminal things from my past. So I was lucky enough to sort of see a lot of new things happen. So things like Dire Straits' the video for Money for Nothing was the first major CGI music video. And then things like the movie Tron, directed by Duisberg, that has probably influenced this video the most. The way they show sort of the digital energy and flow in the film, with the glowing white or glowing red or very definite sort of energy sort of imagery, as it were. And at the same time, like I said, I viewed the whole thing as a journey. So I thought about my journey to where I want to be. And I thought about all the different, how things have, how technology's progressed. So I thought, okay, I'll take some of that very early symbolism and sort of the blocks and the very simple 3D and try and work that into this journey. The journey itself, I wanted to show definite sort of from no technology right the way through to just immersed in technology. And in some ways, although to me it was a personal journey, it could be portrayed as everybody's journey from analog to digital, sort of ended up in the world. And I wanted originally to film one entire long sequence, one 3-minute long walk. The technicalities of doing that and then putting the 3D compositing into it is just mind-boggling. This is a very similar example. It's actually a Spike Jones video that he did for Wax and the song California. The actual video itself is a 2.5-minute long music video. It actually only features one shot, which is this guy on fire, running in slow motion down the street, and the shot slowly zooms out. I thought it was the first time I'd ever seen anybody do that, just one shot for an entire music video. But it really sort of inspired me to try and get that one-shot journey approach. Unfortunately, I couldn't quite do it that way. So the technology itself, because of the theme I went with, the technology theme and the journey from nothing to full immersion in technology, I think the software and things that I used to create the video actually fit really nicely. I learned so much doing this. I've never animated to this level in 3D before. I've certainly never done any video compositing before. So it was a real eye-opener and at the same time a real headache. Because normally there is a vast amount of planning that would go into this, lots of green tone spools and sticks and crosses and X's put about for sort of targeting and planning. And I actually did none of those things, partly to try and get an organic feel to the actual to start with, and partly because I think if I'd done that, it would have taken me considerably longer to actually get the final outcome. If I hadn't had the technology and the know-how to do it, I think I probably would have gone on this kind of route. I might have gone into this video for the White Stripes, Hardest Buttons Bar. And it's kind of like a weird stop motion kind of video. And I could have used a similar sort of technique to this, maybe using sort of lit up illuminated boxes or something, and moving them around to sort of try and recreate that video. Okay, yeah. So in conclusion, yeah, planning probably should have been a lot better. In fact, definitely. Definitely with better footage for the 3D experience. I mean, I actually plan to remake this at some point, and I foresee it taking me considerably longer than it did this time. But sort of moving forwards, they're the sort of skills that I want to develop, and they've got so many potential uses, whether it be music videos, movies, TV, computer games, anything. I mean, you can see it's becoming more and more popular these days with videos like Labyrinth's Earthquake, and quite recently Bombay Bicycle Club with Carry Me. Questions?
Any questions? I may have missed it. I don't know if I did. How does it? How do you feel it is suitable for avant-garde categorizations?
Avant-garde categorizations. In some ways, the way I actually went about it is very avant-garde. It's not the normal way that you would go about actually creating something like this. The actual creative process of it was very avant-garde. The fact that I threw planning out the window completely is just unheard of, doing something like this. I think the content of the video as well, the use of very just plain two-dimensional blocks and things is a little bit out there. It does leave something to be interpreted by the viewer as to what it is they're looking at. Like I say, people from an artistic point of view might think of it one way, and then people from a non-artistic or maybe a gaming point of view might think of it from another way. It's
the interpretation I made out of it was that it made me think of how heavily reliant we are on tech, and like everything in the world has become so technologically reliant, and it's like with the buildings glitching out, it's kind of like, it makes me think of, without the technology, they're just, they're nothing. It's just an interpretation I got.
That's it, yeah. It's sort of along those lines. It starts off with very small, just little blocks here and there, and then you gradually get sort of, the tree starts to go, and the building starts to go, and eventually it ends up collapsing into this digital world, as it were. Yeah.
It smacks to me of the desert of the real.
Yeah.
It's Baldrian postmodernism personified. Whether that was intentional, I don't know.
Slightly. Yeah, slightly.
I think, and the other thing that was slightly different is I wasn't quite sure if you were being the flaneur or the voyeur.
Right, okay.
The flaneur is to walk among the digital experience, which I think starts to become apparent at the end, where we've got this pastiche of buffering. We're waiting to catch up. The world's waiting to catch up. We've come to the end of the scratch disc.
Yeah.
Or whether it's a voyeuristic perspective of what's actually going on, or are you in a sort of Alvin Toffler way, living the experience through this alter ego that is this kind of nondescript female figure. There's a lot going on, and I found it confusing. It didn't confuse the narrative at all, but what it did confuse for me is the literal perspective. Whose eyes are we looking through here? I think there's some uncertainty.
A quick way of kind of summarising is that, what is your position on our relationship with technology? Is it?
Yeah.
I think Simon's asking you: are you feeling that it's ominous, or are you enthralled by it? Are you willing this on? Do you want us to just move into this or not?
Yeah. So, like I say, my personal journey as part of this video was, so I say the whole video is a journey, but like I say, it's slightly open to interpretation. So my interpretation of it is it's my journey, and in some ways I think the technology clouds me. It stops me from actually, as I discovered when I first started trying to do the experiments, it stopped me from being that experimental and being that spontaneous and being, so I'm sort of regimented now by this technology, and I don't seem to be able to get out of this box, and I can't do it. But then other people might see it as doomsday down the road, everybody's going to be digital and off into the abyss. I'd like to think it's not going that way. I'd like to think that people will take a little more hope, slightly more hope from the piece than that. I don't think everybody's going to end in a pixelated mess.
Is there hope in your?
Well, is there room for emotion in the digital world?
Yeah, exactly.
There lies a bigger rhetorical question.
Yeah. Emotions are not transferable yet.
The whole reason of being it black and white.
Yeah.
Most things digitally nowadays are on colour.
Yeah.
Did you think about that?
Yeah, I sort of I wanted there to be this really stark contrast between the real world and this digital presence.
Yeah.
I tried it with colour, and it didn't work with white.
Yeah.
White on colour.
Yeah.
And when I tried to use any other types of colours, like blues or reds, it seemed overly sort of garish and not quite right. So when I took the colour out, made it really contrasty, and then had this really bright white glow, in a similar vein as sort of the Tron films and things like that. It really stood out as something that's not really supposed to be. It's there, but it's not really supposed to be there.
I think there's also from a purely theoretical point of view, if you look at how colours are formatted and how a pixel works, it's either on or it's off. All digital frameworks are grounded in binary, and binary is either 0 or 1. It's either on or off. The only time that I mean, there is some conjecture about whether 0 and 1 can coexist in the same thing, and then you get in the realm of quantum physics and theory. But I think that in colour wouldn't work. I don't think it would work.
Yeah.
Because there's something about, I mean, it's like, it's that whole, if you're a robot, would you see in colour? I suspect you probably wouldn't.
It's just the whole thing about, I suppose, because it's black and white, it kind of creates not much. It can kind of create a doomsday, kind of because it's darker.
I certainly think it strips any emotion away from the logic of what is digital and online.
But I do agree with you, the white does really.
It does, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
It's a powerful space of non-colour. Remember, white isn't a colour. Neither is black. They're two sort of special hues or whatever you want to call them. One is devoid of any light, and the other devoid of any light, so therefore colour can't exist because the photons can't reach to the receptacle, so we can't designate a colour if we're in a pitch black room. Alternatively, white space is devoid of any colour. So I think it works, but it'd be interesting, I think, to sort of theorise a little bit more about what you're trying to say. I know it's a personal journey, but then all of these things are. But I feel that you could have been more successful in trying to get us to see what you see.
I think we all understand that our lives are becoming more digital.
Not everybody's.
Yeah.
But
I think society does recognise that its life is becoming more
everybody's
digital.
been touched by it in some way, others more so than others.
Yeah. It's not necessarily a majorly new statement, and Tron was making it quite a long time ago. And I think one thing that you've put in there is this kind of ghost in the shell figure that's partially there, partially not. You know, that's kind of new. It'd be nice to maybe integrate some new observation that you've made about the way that we use the digital things that might have been different to Tron, you know, whatever it is, 30 years ago now. Whether that's in mass communication or something like that. And coming from a more of an art and design background, I saw it quite a lot sculptural. But then there's a massive difference again between things that are mobile, so you've got these kind of creatures and kind of vehicles. For me, those kind of clash, and I'd like to have heard a little bit more about what your perspective on that was, because for me the strength was the sculptural elements of the space changing, and then those other bits felt slightly gimmicky, and an opportunity for you to show off your kind of technological wizardry, which was good.
My technological wizardry is getting there.
I would say the other thing that I think would have aided that is if we had a whole what I call a smack my bitch up moment where suddenly the camera, the realisation turns on the author, so to speak. I mean, we have elements of it with the hands fizzling out to nothing, but I think there may have been room for a more panoramic viewpoint of, oh, that's what the author looks like. What relation does that? Now we can start to form relationships between the author and the personality of the author in relation to what we've just witnessed.
I did consider that, but then because I thought about some kind of reflection to show this sort of an early reflection of a real person, and then the final sort of reflections of, and then a really
whatever it's going to be,
badly done person, as it were, sort of final. But then the similarities between that and Smack the Bitch Up, where the final reveal is in a mirror.
That's it.
It sort of bothered me slightly. I couldn't think of another way to do it, having been in the eyes of the person the whole time, so then just to pop out for a minute and have a look.
I think it would probably would have been your toughest challenge to think of a way of doing that successfully, and for it to fit like a jigsaw puzzle would into what you've already established. Had you had more time, I think you could have maybe reached some kind of compromise.
We're going to have to move on to the next one. Thank you ever so much.
Thanks, Paul.